This is the Real Digital Transformation podcast series, empowering technology and business professionals to succeed with digital transformation. Now, here's your host, best-selling author and series editor of the Pearson Digital Enterprise series, Thomas Earl.
Hi, this is Thomas Earl, and welcome to the Real AI and Digital Transformation podcast series. Today I have with me Lev Mazin, the CEO and co-founder of Ask Your Target Market, also known as aytm.com. Welcome, Lev.
Thank you. Hi, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
So we're here today to talk about the impact of AI, specifically Agentic AI, in the consumer enterprise strategies that organizations have been using for cultivating and growing their relationships with consumers. And you are here to explain to us the three waves of the consumer insights that have been reshaping those enterprise strategies and how all that now has been culminating into the involvement of Agentic AI.
Yes, and it's something that I've been focusing on most of my waking hours for the past couple decades. And I have seen, and we continue observing these tectonic shifts and major waves. And the first wave that has been around for many decades is the reliance on full service agencies for full service outsourcing of very high caliber specialists coming into enterprises and answering their consumer insights questions, whether it's about strategy of their entire company, expansion, or more tactical ones related to pricing and packaging and optimization, concept testing, and all others. But the way of getting to those insights was rooted in companies outsourcing that to the full service agencies. And it came with all the great assurances of quality, like you don't get fired for hiring IBM, and red carpet treatment, and all other benefits inherent to that way of working. But it also was inherently slow and expensive process. So rolling back to 2008, 2009, there were a bunch of full-service agencies, there were panel companies, and there were a number of technology companies. But all of those were not talking to each other, right? It was quite fragmented infrastructure in our industry. And the wave of DIY, do-it-yourself consumer insights, started right about that time when aytm, being a small startup, introduced a novel idea that anyone can formulate their questions, program them, launch with a credit card, and get answers a few hours later from their target audience without talking to salespeople. And that grew in complexity, that grew in popularity, and a decade later, only a lazy company didn't introduce some or all components of that business model. Specifically, panel companies moved and added survey tools and consultancy arms. Consultant companies also connected their API panel partners or had their own panels and added that DIY layer. And the technology companies also often started selling the full cycle. And that created efficiencies, that created speed to insights, that created a lot of understanding and knowledge of how exactly those insights were produced. Because with full service, it's based solely on trust and on reputation of the provider. The second wave served us very well, and many wise CPG companies and global consumer brands repositioned their talents to adopt this idea of hands on the keyboard and used different growing population of wonderful DIY platforms. Before we move to AIY wave, I would like to provide a few examples of what it felt like in the full service and in DIY world. In full service, thinking back in the beginning of the century, if you had a project, you were looking at least $30,000 to start a conversation, to sign a contract, to speak to several salespeople, or a little army of very smart statisticians and researchers to be involved in this process, to set up the parameters of what you want to get and implement all the smart methodologies on the back end and connect different companies, as I mentioned a little bit ago. And at the end, produce a report that you would be getting to advise your internal decisions. With DIY, that time frame and that expense significantly was reduced. Instead of waiting 3 months, you were able to do similar job in a few days. And you still could use the very sophisticated models and research tests such as MaxDiff and choice-based conjoint and orchestrate them within a particular platform that you were using and get access to general population or specialized panels around the world. It felt much faster. It feels empowering, but you still need to understand what you're doing because you can mess it up. You need to use all those tools wisely and have the experience and the research expertise in order to achieve great results and take advantage of the efficiencies.
Super. Thank you. Go ahead.
And the new wave is even more fascinating. It inherits all the benefits of do-it-yourself wave, but it reduces the pre-existing reliance on experience of the user. Because with AI and all the previous technology that companies were building, for the first time, we technologists and market researchers joining our forces can encompass all the knowledge and methodologies and know-how into a system that is there to serve a much wider spectrum of people with helping them to avoid rookie mistakes, with understanding their natural language, with translating what they want to learn into how to learn that properly, and unpacking the insights, starting with the very classical statistical analysis, and then explaining it in the reporting visualizations and the language that those marketers and brand managers and strategists and client success, employee success, and C-suite and other people, the end users of the wisdom of consumer insights, are actually seeking.
Super. And so how then would the example you provided before be impacted by the involvement of that?
The real impact and real speed of it is yet to be seen. We are just at the beginning of the AIY wave, but the reality is that you will see results at very comparable speed as DIY, perhaps sometimes even shorter, although the results of a quantitative study that are produced in less than 24 hours sometimes are critiqued because it's hard to make them representative. But the world of delivery from start to finish shrunk to hours. And the biggest impact, of course, is who can initiate it, who can benefit it. The speed is in not waiting for specialists available for you internally or externally, but interacting with AI agents directly to answer your questions while avoiding the problem of asking ChatGPT or any other LLM and suffering with hallucinations and prediction of the next word rather than methodical consumer insights proper methodology.
Super. So, based on what you've seen so far involving agentic AI in these processes and basically redefining how enterprises relate to their customers, to the consumers of what they provide, have you seen any challenges or obstacles or significant problems that have arisen from attempting to involve agentic AI in the automation and in enhancing the intelligence or the responsiveness of organizations? Is there anything that you've seen that you can let the listeners know that they should be looking out for?
Sure, sure. So first of all, it's challenging to see what is real gold and what just looks like gold, right? We'll have experienced that by now that we see a very convincing answer from AI, and we run with it if we're in a rush, only to discover that we made a false claim in a conversation, hopefully at a more informal conversation rather than at your formal board presentation or something. LLMs inherently are prone to justifying any set of data and outcomes that seem in the moment as most logical to predict based on the context that it was given. They're not evil, they're not bad or good, they're just that's how they work. And for non-researchers especially, it's the biggest challenge of the day, I think, is how to tell the difference between an output from one system versus an output from another system that are equally convincing, and they sound smart, they sound like plausible, and the temptation to just take them on the face value and run with them is very high. The more technical answer to this question that I think will relate to a lot of companies like aytm who are in this business trying to solve it is that LLMs that AI of this generation is focusing on are very good at summarizing and working with unstructured data. And that's why we see a generation of startups and pretty well funded young companies focusing on qualitative research. Qualitative being made of words primarily and conversations and interviews, because it's much easier to structure them, to moderate them, to summarize and analyze them. The biggest challenge I think that our industry is currently has a privilege and pleasure solving is how to marry the strength of the AI agents and LLMs with the quantitative data and classical statistical analysis of it without dropping the bar on quality, repeatability, and performance of that study.
Right. And so, how should organizations then approach the involvement of LLMs into their processes and workflows? To what extent should they rely on the output, and how have you seen them effectively being able to assess that output, base decisions on it, or reject it if it doesn't appear to be legitimate or accurate, or whatever the scenario may require? What types of steps are organizations using to effectively involve LLMs, given the potential risk of bad output?
I would say that the most important thing is to trust their internal experts. I think that many companies are rushing into workforce reduction prematurely and exposing themselves to decisions that are suboptimal, stemming from the problem of those who are left to make those decisions and interpret the results and structure studies to being experts in other jobs and not really having the benefit of decades of experience. So my first advice is to always rely on people who are doing it in the previous waves and know exactly what it involves and what needs to be done for something to be prudent and reliable. Second, if you are in a rush and you need to just form your own perception of what is reliable and what not, try to repeat it. That's a very simple thing that anyone can do, sometimes even very inexpensively. And try to repeat it with some variations. Try to repeat it from in a few days and see how repeatable that insight is. If you're just trying to do a desk research, try different models from different vendors to see if they're agreeing with each other or not. But if it's a more involved study, try running it at some cadence, a few waves, and see if it's totally random or indistinguishable from what a random response would be, or if you really have some depth to the method that that vendor or that way of gathering information entails.
Super. Awesome. So it's certainly a very interesting shift that's happening right now, and it really appears as though it's going to only speed up. There's a mounting motivation and interest and aggressive adoption happening right now. Following these, going through these three waves that you described and leading to, who knows what thereafter. And we really appreciate you stopping by today to give us your take on what you're seeing in the industry and your expert insights. Before we conclude, could you tell us a bit more about Ask Your Target Market, what you do, and some of your achievements?
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine. I appreciate your questions and being here. aytm has had a fantastic journey, and I continue enjoying every minute of it. We've been unusually to other companies in our industry and in the startup world self-funded and profitable for many years. We were honored to be named among Fortune 500 companies by Inc. 5000 for 4 times in different years, and continue figuring out this very dynamically changing environment and industry and innovating every year. That's probably the best portion of this job, to figure out what's happening and coming up with solutions that the largest CPG companies, consumer brands, and financial companies in the world appreciate, trust, and use every day. Thank you, Thomas.
Great. Thanks so much. And hopefully we'll have a chance to touch base on the development of the enterprise consumer relationships in the future as more agentic AI adoption has occurred, and as perhaps maybe there'll be a fourth wave you can report to us on.
Perhaps. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Follow Thomas on LinkedIn